myself and Kevin, who's joining us as well. Kevin's one of our CFOs, and he is actually a certified fraud examiner. So there's a lot of benefit to having him on the call as well. He'll be kind of fielding questions. If you have those, feel free to put them in the chat. But we're going to talk about some things that are impacting modern finance today, as well as go through what are the functions of it, and then how we guard against it in Dynamics 365, and then obviously winning the Surface earbuds, and we'll ship those anywhere in the world. So whoever wins that, congratulations. We'll be reaching out to you shortly. So a little bit about myself. My name is Josh Santiago. I'm the VP of Sales and Managing Partner here at Dynamic Consultants Group. I've been in technology, specifically strategic consulting, as well as sales and marketing for the last decade. Been doing that for a long time. I've had the opportunity to speak around the world and have met Raz on multiple occasions in multiple countries. So looking forward to the day where we can all be back together again, doing that again. And Kevin, I don't know if you're able to join via audio, but if you just want to introduce yourself really quick.
We have just made Kevin a presenter, so he should be able to introduce himself now. Hello, Kevin.
Hello there. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. My name is Kevin Brewer, and like Josh said, I've been with Dynamic Consultants Group now for several years, one of the founding fathers, if you will, of the company. But I have over 20 years of experience in banking, auditing, fraud detection, and consulting. A lot of that is with Microsoft Dynamics. So I've been with Dynamics for several years, kind of came up through the ranks. So I've seen a lot of the different areas of the system, but also I have several certifications from my time in finance and also my time at Dynamic Consultants Group. So I have my certified fraud examiner certification, as well as a certified IS auditor, and then also several Microsoft certifications.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Josh.
So with that, we'll kind of dive into who's DCG, right? DCG is a global Microsoft partner focused on implementation, support, development, and rollout of everything within the Microsoft ecosystem. So we have offices and resources around the world. So feel free, if you've got questions or need a partner that can help you, we're certainly here and available to help. So with that, we'll kind of move on right into the session. So understanding some of the challenges in modern finance. So, as finance leaders, they're responsible for more and more every single day, whether that's ensuring resilience in times of uncertainty, as we've all just come through, or managing digital transformation projects. CFOs are no longer really expected to just simply look at financial operations, but really are expected to play a more strategic role across the entire organization. And with that, they're becoming increasingly more involved in transformation projects, becoming almost transformation specialists or chief future officers, as the outlook shifts from cash flow and finding new markets or revenue streams to assuming more of the decision making and future investment decision roles. A recent McKinsey study showed that 91% of respondents said that their organization had undergone at least one transformation in the past 3 years. And if I can think of just our own organization, we've gone through 2 major implementations in the last 3 years. So those are, again, just the uptick in, as Satya Nadella would say, the tech intensity that we're all seeing across the board. And also 44% of CFOs are playing a more active role in leading these transformations now. So as customers and organizations need these, business models need to keep up. And an organization's internal capability to manage risk as well as forecast are really becoming more and more critical. Data can no longer be looked at in silos, and analysis almost needs to be near real time and predictive at this point. And so with that, we're seeing more and more of these financial leaders expressing an ever-present financial performance demand, as well as global regulation, and compliance are becoming more and more complex. And so having tools that are able to help mitigate those are becoming more and more important. So we see that corporate fraud is among one of the largest and growing challenges that people in the finance sector face today. And helping your company to enforce not only accurate reporting at scale, but using technology to minimize fraud and revenue leaks is a critical part of how the financial success of the organization will continue throughout this new period of growth that we're seeing throughout the world. And so with that, what are some of the serious roadblocks to success? Well, as you look to juggle the demands that come from each of these critical roles, you're going to keep hitting similar roadblocks that impact performance, increase risk, and slow down operations overall. Although a company's financial management system is critical to the success of the organization, we find that many have outdated and fragmented systems across a variety of different platforms, whether that be SAP and Microsoft and Salesforce. And that only leads to data silos that cause static and untimely reporting, but really limit the ability to anticipate necessary changes and adapt to financial operations. Similarly, we see the growing regulatory requirements and digital threats through the acceleration of risk around the globe that leads to increased need for accountability and further threat protection from not only the customer's experience as a consumer, but also from the revenue side, from the organization's perspective. And yet, as we continue to recognize the need to address these issues, many of our employees continue to be bogged down by both manual and inefficient processes, as well as error-prone productivity tools that no longer are supporting the scalability that most organizations really seek to achieve. So not only are they hindering operational effectiveness, but they're preventing people from really driving the strategic value add that they're capable of. Many CFOs will actually cite the staff capacity as the ability to adapt to change and the main barrier for adopting new technologies. I think everyone on the call has been a part of a project at one point in their career where really it was the capacity of the team internally to be able to implement that really did slow down the transformation process. So with that, how do we unlock the continuity and predictive and proactive modeling for this? So we must overcome the challenges that ensure the access of the business to real-time data to provide relevant insights and risk analysis with predictive forecasting and modeling. At the same time, we really have to maintain continuity across the operation, and this means planning for both short-term and long-term, as well as the distinct and separate entities that really make up the overall organization's financial picture. So performance requires redesigning the financial structure with the right roles and the right delivery models across the organization to really provide that purpose-driven strategy that impacts and empowers the workforce to stay focused. Really, at this point, as we all have experienced not only the supply chain side of things that's slowing down, but also the overall workforce changes in demand. And so protection strategies really help control this risk by reducing not only transactional fraud, but also account fraud. And it really helps organizations to minimize that revenue loss due to improper discounting, merchandise return fraud, stolen merchandise, and some of the other things that what Microsoft has also built that we won't cover in today. Believe me, we do a whole workshop on this, and if you're interested in that, reach out to myself or Kevin. But we do about a 4 to 5 hour workshop on this particular product. And so with that, some of the other things are workforce time and attendance fraud, things like just product fraud from vendors, things like that. So there's a lot to this product that we won't cover today. This is really meant to be very high level. And forgive me if I'm moving too quickly. I am trying to cover a lot of ground as quickly as possible. So again, feel free to reach out to myself or Kevin. We're available for questions offline, but I do want to be mindful of the time. So with that, so let's talk about how Dynamics 365 really enables the financial risk mitigation. And we see just the general overall outline of kind of what the channels of the finance department are, right? Everything from budgeting and cash flow to compliance and e-reporting to invoicing and intercompany billing and consolidated reporting. And then you have the layer below that that's fraud protection, account protection, loss prevention. And then even below that, you have the ability to see compliance and skills and utilizations. And with that, you can see how Microsoft actually frames all of this together. Dynamics 365 Finance Insights really gives you that added layer. So if you're using D365 Finance today, you can see that the add-on of Finance Insights and fraud protection and human resources really helps pull all of this into one centralized, singular location. And what D365 fraud protection can help you do is protect the business and the consumer against fraud to help drive down costs and not only achieve higher revenue, but improve the overall shopping and purchasing experience of your end customers. And that's really, at the end of the day, what drives revenue the most, is making sure that your customers and your vendors have the most seamless experience when making purchases through your organization. So with that, we'll dive into protecting against fraud and dealing with that revenue protection. So what is Dynamics 365 fraud protection? Well, Dynamics 365 fraud protection is a purpose-built module built on Dynamics 365 that lives in Azure, and we'll kind of talk about some of those things here in just a minute. But you have the ability to do things like fraud protection across device fingerprinting or operations research or looking at an entire network. And there's a new benefit that's just recently been added, and you'll see that there at the bottom, called knowledge exchange with banks. And what this is actually doing is this is allowing the free flow of data back and forth between the AI models that sit in fraud protection and the bank's own transaction data, so that they can look at the two together and actually make a determination and a score based on the determination of whether or not that's actually a fraudulent activity. So passing that information back and forth allows the bank to not only get better, but your organization to gather the information that the bank has used to determine whether or not a certain activity may be fraud, and actually feed that into the model so that you have a more holistic view end to end of the entire transaction cycle. So with that, purchase protection is a huge component of D365's fraud protection model. Not only does it reduce fraud and the losses and manual review of expenses by using the AI model to continuously learn and adapt to those patterns that really do help quickly flag things like fraud and all of the various things that really go into showing something is not right in these transactions. So it's going to take that fraud manager's time and really truncate it down from a lot of manual review and process into a very quick automated side of it. And if I have time, I will certainly make the opportunity to really push into that and kind of demo that. And if I remember right, it's the top of the hour, Raz. Is that right?
Hi, Josh. Yes, you've still got half an hour left. Correct. Yeah, top of the hour.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Good deal. Good deal. Okay, I can slow down just a bit. I appreciate it. So good. So you've got obviously the opportunity to protect revenue by decreasing wrongful rejections. So wrongful rejection and customer friction is obviously something that we don't want to introduce, right? We want to have this seamless interaction between our customers and our fraud protection, but at the same time, we don't want to necessarily overemphasize those protections where they create barriers such as two-factor authentication and CAPTCHAs that actually slow down the purchasing cycle, or maybe even errant or anomalous flags that end up declining transactions. That creates what's called customer friction, and that customer friction then in turn decreases revenue, because the consumer, if I'm constantly trying to purchase something and getting denied, eventually I'm just going to give up and move on and purchase it from Amazon or somewhere else. So really having a tool that allows you to increase the fluidity between that transaction process between you and your customers helps, again, to increase that revenue on that side. So then account protection. One of the other things that I didn't mention before, but I'll mention here, is the ability to do account protection, whether that's sign-in or account creation protection. We all live in a world where we're accustomed to bots, and those bots are just a way of life. And one of the biggest things things that Microsoft Dynamics allows us to do is really monitor the incoming traffic, whether that's from the account creation level or whether that's from the account sign in. How many times have we all been exposed or heard of a sign in attempt that ended up gaining access to an account that led to transaction fraud and a customer's identity being used to purchase things that weren't theirs, right? Well, this actually allows you to monitor where that traffic data is coming from and do quick analysis and policy-based controls around how those transactions are actually approved or denied. Whether they can actually go through with creating an account. I'll show that here in just a few minutes in the demo, but you're able to see very quickly how you can simply sit down with core set of logic in your mind and write out very simple rules that the system will then use to determine whether or not an account creation or sign-in attempt should be blocked or a transaction. And then obviously loss prevention. Things like returns and discounts are a huge component to in-store fraud. And so dealing with anomalies around purchasing and merchandise discounting or returns or cash returns, there's a huge manual effort in a lot of organizations right now requiring them to determine whether or not these are valid or invalid. And so what Dynamics 365 allows you to do is really layer on an intelligence that's looking at every transaction and every terminal and every sales or not sales rep, but every store individual and looking at their interactions across a historical time frame that allows them to say, okay, in this month, you averaged, this amount of returns, and in this month it was 90% higher. Well, what's the justification for that? And so you can really begin to isolate and pinpoint in large organizations where you may have individuals or individual terminals being misused. And so with that, I'm going to take a second to hop over into the demo environment. Which I should have right here. Kevin, can you see that all right? I want to make sure the screen shares.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So Microsoft's doing a big refresh right now. We all know it's the October release cycle, so the actual live demo instance is down. So I was able to get a hold of the demo mate. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through that right now. So I apologize. It's not nearly as interactive and on the fly as I'd like it to be, but it's still going to work for the purposes that we have today. So this is Dynamics 365 fraud protection. So when you sign in, one of the first things you're brought to is the main screen, and it gives you these 3 boxes that allows you to really pick from different activities that you can create fraud protection models against. And below it, you can see that it has a general setup. So we're John in this example. We're in the Contoso demo. So if you're familiar with Microsoft's demo environments, you're familiar with the fictional coffee company that is Contoso. And so I, as John, the one of the fraud analysts, I want to go in and I want to understand some of the purchasing. And so I'm going to open the scorecard and I'm going to look at everything involved in that. So right now, when we're taken into the purchasing scorecard, what we can see is an interactive embedded Power BI dashboard that's pulling out of all of your financial data from Dynamics 365 Finance. And with that, I can see things like volume of transaction, final approval rate, the bank's acceptance rate, and what our chargebacks are. And I can actually go through and see all of these as they sit. Now, this is obviously over a large and broad time frame, so let's shorten this up just a little bit to be a bit more easy to digest. So with that, I've now filtered this down to, from January of last year to June of last year, and I can actually see over that time frame what our transaction volume was, where the final approval rates lied, and what the bank acceptance rate was, and then how we did with chargebacks. So I can see if there's an anomaly. I can quickly visualize the data to see representative of how our organization is performing as a whole. And if I wanted to, I could come in here and I can do what we talked about a minute ago, which is the transaction acceptance booster. And what that actually does is it sends select data points back to the issuing bank. And so there's this mutual transfer of information between the banking institution and your Dynamics 365 fraud protection instance. Now, I will say some of this is only available in the United States. Some of this is only available with certain banking institutions globally. So if your organization's looking to implement that, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to walk you through some of the particulars of this as well. So I did want to show that off really quick. So with that, we'll go back into the purchasing scorecard and we'll look at the rules engine. So right here, we have the rules engine. And if you're familiar with building standard if statements, this will come fairly easy to you. So what we're doing right now is we're building a condition. So I want to return approval when the user's email has been validated. And then I also want to approve it when the user's score. So when the risk score associated with that user is below a certain amount. And then we can add another one to automatically reject it when the user's email is not validated. And so we can see very quickly, I can build a rules engine around how the automation is happening within the system. So we're looking at email validation, we're looking at risk scoring, and we're making a determination of whether or not we should or should not move forward with this particular purchase. And so with that, if I go into the virtual fraud analyst, they provide kind of this historical view and evaluate the data based off of risk scoring and whether or not they'll be approved, because what it does is help determine what the acceptable levels of chargebacks or refunds or lost revenue are. And so with that, we'll select a node. And then inside of that, what we'll do is we'll filter this data down to just a particular time period. And we can see here that in this particular time period, we had 834 transactions, 834,000 transactions approved, 133 that were confirmed fraud, and we rejected 73,000. And then if we really wanted to, we could then drill it down further to show me just the level of risk that was associated really above 500. And your organization can really set those fraud score ranges, the risk score ranges, based off of your tolerances as an organization. So it really allows you to really dial these in to get them specific to what your organization is concerned with. So with that, I can then drill these risk impacts up and down to see whether or not we did or didn't block transactions. So we can see here that what our catch rate was. So for example, we blocked 1,000 out of 2,000 fraudulent transactions. So in this particular example, 68%. And then obviously non-fraudulent transactions, we blocked 11,000 out of 2 million. So a very, very small percentage of our customers that were non-fraudulent did not have a good buying experience. This allows you to then tweak the models to be more and more accurate that allow your organization to decrease that customer friction so that you're maximizing the fraudulent transactions that are caught, but minimizing the customers who are legitimate that are being blocked. So let's filter the data again, and let's make some adjustments to that. And we'll come back up here and we'll go back to the dashboard. So with that, one of the next things that we'll look at is looking at loss prevention. So right here, I can see loss prevention based on anomalous staff counts as well as anomalous terminal counts. So I can see we did $3.3 million in returns with a $37,000 discount on that over this particular time frame. And inside of that, I can see that November had a particularly higher likelihood of fraudulent transactions. So I want to do a little bit more drilling into that. I can see that almost 4,000 staff counts were actually very likely, based off of the scoring model, to be fraudulent. So with that, I can actually drill down and I can actually click on one of these staff members. So if I pull up a staff member here, I can actually go in and I can see what their risk score was over each month. So I can see their maximum score was 1,000. Their average score is about 192, and they have had 8 scorings. And I can see when those incidents happen. So right here, I can see that there was a fairly high level of returns in September. So their return ratio was 91%, and in May it was 99%. So it allows us to really pick out and isolate those time frames where there was high amounts of fraud detected by the system. And then you can go into reason details and you can view each individual reason and look at the status code and the value over a particular period of time. It really allows you to drill in, and then whether or not this is true staff fraud, you can make that determination manually. But again, the process here is to really help the people that are in charge of this to automate their day-to-day operations rather than having to do this data research manually. And so now let's look at scoring everything in the very high percentile. So we'll look at between 900 and 1,000. So we can now see each individual transaction filtered down to a very high likelihood that it was fraudulent. So gives you the ability to do that. And so with that, we'll talk about account creation as well. And so I mentioned account creation a second ago and the ability to actually look at bot traffic and look at how it impacts both account creation and account login. So in this particular model, what you're seeing is you're looking at the scorecard for how that bot traffic is not only impacted based off of country. So we can see that Canada and India are the two highest, as well as some of the other countries that are higher as well. But we can also see that 2 million of those transactions, whether those were account creations, were not flagged in that score as fraudulent. And you can see the distribution as it moves up there. And then we can also see the risk score associated with that there. So we can see that Russia and Brazil and Mexico have a much higher risk in terms of the risk score that they have associated with them. And then we can also see the decisions based on time. So if I wanted to see over the course of a 24-hour period over this particular date, I can see where those rule decisions kicked in and how that impacted what was approved or rejected or challenged. And we can see, obviously, as time went on, more and more were rejected, obviously, as bots continue to try to create accounts. And so with that, again, we can quickly drill in and see how the system is actually making determinations based off of these rules. So when the user type is a consumer, and we're going to reject it when there's a location mismatch, we're going to look at the safe email, but we're also going to do something interesting. We're going to look up what we call payment instrument cutoffs. So this allows you to set custom scorecard cutoffs at certain thresholds. So it allows you to predefine your risk categories based off of the particular type of instrument that the user is actually engaged with. And so with that, you actually have the ability to say, direct debit, we're going to let that run up to 950. Credit card, we want it to be much lower. PayPal is much lower because each individual transaction, each individual payment method has a different process for being reimbursed or dealt with. And so you're able to actually go in and adjust that based off of certain criteria. And then obviously you can set a general score cutoff. So when the bot score is above 700, you want to return the challenge of an SMS text message. And so this allows you to, again, decrease that customer friction by providing a way for them to have almost a seamless experience of creating that account. But if there is a risk that the address doesn't match, or if the payment type is a certain value, then what we want to do is we want to issue another level of protection or another level of verification, so that that user at that point would have to then respond to a text message or enter that code. But this allows you to, for the vast majority of users, never interact with them in a way that is another additional step, which hinders that account creation or that account login or those purchasing processes. So if we go back here, now we can look at how these lists are built. And so the email safe list allows you to see adding safe email. So if you want to do testing, or if you have a group of users that are if you're using Dynamics 365 Customer Insights and you have custom segmentation built and you have custom groupings that say these are high value safe accounts, let's go ahead and add them to a safe list. You could do something like that. And again, mentioning internal payment instrument cutoffs determined based off of what they are. And again, these can all be customized and edited to your organization's requirements and needs. So with that, we now look at account login. It's going to work almost identically to the account creation side of things, where we're seeing not only the risk scoring, but we're also seeing the overall distribution of how many bots are active, as well as how many of those login attempts are being blocked or challenged with a CAPTCHA or approved and automatically signed in. So we can see that that same account creation process is going to flow back to the account login, because if we can catch fraudulent activity logging in with accounts that have saved transactions, this allows them to, again, block a potential fraudulent transaction, saving the company money. So with that, let's look at the Power BI report that Microsoft has built based off of this. So we can see the out-of-the-box Power BI report that comes with it that allows you to see things like score distribution. So you can see here that the system gives you a built-in dashboard that you're able to see in real time. So for example, if there's a team that needs to be monitoring these, you have a fairly well-built adaptive dashboard that allows you to change not only the scoring, but the risk assessment, and then look at things like reasoning, where you can filter these down into a particular request or adjust a particular score. So for example, I can see here the IP known bad history reason code that is in the bot score of 900. I can see there was 18,000 sessions that match that in this particular time frame. So over these 3 days in this Power BI report, I can really drill into those, and then we can give those to our technical team to make determinations on how we actually address that. So do we block that IP address, or do we change the way the order screen works, or do we adjust it so that we reduce that traffic? Again, this is proactive insights in some areas and it's reactive in another. So it's just something to think about from that perspective. So with that, we can obviously see when we're looking at the score distribution of status, in the middle you see that period session count by bot score. And if we look at this, if we look at things like just rejected, now it filters that down to just rejected. I can see, we talked about customer friction before. We talked about how obviously we're blocking those 900, this one here in the center that's gold. We can see that we're blocking those and we're doing a great job of that. But we can also see that on the next day, there are some 0 score transactions that did get rejected. And so it's something for us to tweak the internal metrics of how we monitor that to make sure that transactions and customers that are low risk aren't being blocked from making purchases, which again affects the overall revenue. And so with that, we can see it also will give you a heat map of sessions by location. So you may see the world map on the scorecard, but you're able to actually drill into a heat map by hyper-specific location and really make determinations of how you address those situations. And so with that, I will pass it back over here. And that, how am I doing? I've got about 15 minutes. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. I want to open it up for discussion. And I know that I flew through that at about 900 miles an hour to try to make up some time. So I appreciate everybody staying with us. But again, if you'd like the session materials, if you'd like the details, and you'd like to win a set of Surface earbuds, please scan the QR code with your camera on your phone, and you should be able to quickly access the Microsoft form for that. We're happy to provide these materials to you and your team. But yeah, is there any questions?
Thank you, Josh. So let's wait a couple of minutes for some questions. No questions so far. I've pasted the information regarding the prize in the chat. So remember to make sure. Sorry, Josh.
Oh, I said thank you.
Oh yeah, just in case anyone's missed it, please ensure you submit that for a chance to win those awesome headphones. Any questions? We'll wait one more minute, a couple more minutes. Sorry, Kevin, was that a question?
Sorry, I was just going to say, while we're waiting for questions, I may jump in and add, from a higher level, I think a key area, with any of your systems, with whatever type of business that you're operating, is that, the system is great, but there's, as Josh showed, there's a lot of data, tons of data to look through. There's a lot of preparation to make sure the system is, set up with your needs. So it really helps to identify areas of risk within your particular type of business, to kind of look at those areas that are critical, things that you want to focus on, and have the system help you with. Maybe a risk assessment would be in line to kind of look at, what's my tolerance for risk? What can I, stand to lose? What can I not? And then also look as well, like what other controls do you have? Maybe some non-system mitigating controls that may be in place that, if you've got a well-trained, staff, or maybe you've got, security posted within any store, maybe that gives you some controls that then you can focus on other areas that maybe you don't have such strong controls, and allow the system to really, work to your advantage in combination with the controls that you already have in place.
Thank you, Kevin. And I have to admit, Josh, that's the first time I've actually seen the fraud detection in action, and it looks like a really great facilitator. But as you mentioned, Kevin, that's not enough, right? Just having the tool is not enough. There's a whole piece around investigation and exploratory requirements to ensure that it's been configured and set up in the correct way.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
Okay, well, there's no other questions. So
Awesome.
I've noticed that a lot of people have been, obviously it's been a learning experience for many people. Often on financial service projects, often you encounter new requirements along the way. And I think the journey on a financial service project often opens up requirements that require investigation. And I think this session really opens up the opportunity to really understand what is possible. So I just want to thank you, Josh, for sharing your insight and your knowledge of the fraud detection features within Dynamics. It is a niche skill set. It's quite still, it's still relatively a new product. So I just want to thank you for sharing your insight into that with the wider community who are yet to really understand the power that it can bring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, Rez, we offer a lot of workshops and demos of Dynamics 365 finance products. So if you are looking at making a transition into finance, if you don't have it today, we're more than happy to help walk your team through. There's so many pieces of it that we could have covered today. Everything from the advanced cash flow forecasting models to third-party requisition tools and things like that. So feel free to reach out to, again, myself or Kevin. We're more than happy to walk you through that. We do a number of these implementations and are engaged in a number of these implementations around the world. So we're able to support not only here locally in the United States, but also customers all over the world.
Fantastic. So are you able to share your contact details in the chat?
Yes, absolutely. I realized that
so much.
I didn't do that.
Thank you so much. And you will get a chance, another chance to catch either Josh or Kevin or Dustin at the Dataverse Summit. That's next month. So that's a 3-day event. It's a very, very large event covering everything on the Dataverse. There's been lots of questions on the Dataverse today. They will all be answered. In fact, I almost guarantee that you'll actually walk away being almost an expert on Dataverse after attending that event. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Once again, Josh, Kevin, and DCG Dynamic Consultants Group, thank you once again for being a community sponsor, supporting these community events around the globe. And we do hope to see you in person very, very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Raz, very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you there, Josh and Kevin, joining us all the way from the United States, covering that topic of fraud detection. And again, a very, very new topic, and it was great to see that in action. And we will, our grand finale, our last final session, we will finally close off onto our final session with Microsoft MVP, Wael Hamzeh. Wael Hamzeh is known for being the first person to implement DevOps for Dynamics and Power Platform by building DevOps tools for Dynamics and for the Power Platform. And so